Okay, so we're diving into negotiation today.
Yeah,
And you've sent over a really interesting mix of sources.
right.
Everything from classic negotiation texts to like these really captivating survival stories.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me how all of those things connect.
Right.
You can learn negotiation skills from not just, business situations or hostage negotiations,
Yeah.
but also like extreme scenarios where people are trying to just survive.
Yeah, exactly. Like our mission today is to kind of extract this wisdom for anyone who is like working in an office or selling things.
Right.
Like how can we uncover the strategies that can help us navigate these tricky conversations and close deals and get what we want
Hmm.
without losing our sanity or optimism along the way.
Right. And these sources really emphasize this method developed at Harvard called principled negotiation.
Okay.
And it's about finding those mutually beneficial solutions by separating the people from the problem
Okay.
and focusing on interests, not positions.
So less about winning and more about creating outcomes where everyone like feels good.
Precisely.
Okay.
So instead of digging your heels in on a certain position, you ask why.
Okay.
Why does your boss want that report formatted in a certain way?
Uh-huh.
What are your clients really worried about when they hesitate to sign?
Yeah, there's that great example in one of the sources about the two girls arguing over an orange.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
remember that one?
Yeah, the classic example.
Yeah.
You know,
Y-
turns out one wanted the peel for baking and the other wanted just the fruit to eat.
Yeah.
So classic positional bargaining.
Right.
Both focused on, I get the orange,
Right.
but by understanding those underlying interests,
Yeah.
they both got what they needed.
Yeah. So uncovering that why
Yeah,
can lead to a solution that wasn't even on the table initially.
absolutely.
And this feels especially relevant like in a sales environment.
Yeah.
It's just like pushing your product. You're trying to understand their real needs
Mm-hmm.
and see if there's a genuine fit.
Yeah, and by doing that, you build trust and rapport,
Right.
which are essential for long-term success in any field.
Okay, so now some of these sources go beyond like the everyday office conflicts
Right.
and into some pretty high stakes scenarios.
Yeah.
The Canadian constitutional negotiations, for example.
This is a really fascinating example.
Yeah.
It shows how even seemingly impossible conflicts
Yeah.
can be resolved with creative solutions.
Right.
The deadlock over an entrenched Charter of Rights was broken
Okay.
by introducing the notwithstanding clause,
Interesting.
which allowed Parliament to override court rulings in certain cases.
Wow.
So it addresses concerns about judicial overreach while still enabling the charter.
So even in situations where the stakes are super high,
Yeah.
there's still room for compromise and creative problem solving.
Exactly, like unlocking a hidden door.
Yeah.
These sources suggest that even really entrenched positions can be shifted
Wow.
with the right approach.
But sometimes, though, the stakes are even higher than like a sale or a promotion.
Absolutely.
One of the sources you sent recounts this story of Manihiki Islanders sailing for food
Yeah.
when supplies were running low.
Right.
It's just a really gripping tale of survival.
Yeah, and it highlights the importance of speaking up even when you're facing authority
Right.
and even when it might be risky.
It's a cautionary tale, too, though, right?
It is.
About unchecked optimism.
Right.
So sometimes resilience means knowing when to push back and hold firm to your own principles,
Exactly.
even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance between being flexible and being assertive.
And it's so interesting how these sources emphasize the importance of language,
Yeah.
how even a slight rephrasing can completely change how an idea is received.
They give the example of a labor dispute in Vancouver,
Okay.
where the term computer referral system sparked fear and resistance.
Imagine if they had framed it differently.
Right.
Do you think the negotiation would have been smoother?
Quite possibly. Yeah.
So choosing your words carefully
Yeah.
and considering the other person's perspective
It can make all the difference.
can make all the difference. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting.
All right.
These sources make these really surprising connections between psychology, marketing, and negotiation.
Yeah, because it's all about influence and persuasion,
Right.
understanding how people make decisions.
One of the sources even like breaks down Cialdini's principles of influence.
Right.
Things like reciprocity,
Right. Think free samples,
free samples, commitment,
publicly stating your goal.
publicly stating your goals. Okay.
Direct social proof.
Like testimonials and reviews and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
And these can be just as effective in an office setting.
Right.
Like if you're trying to persuade your boss to approve a project.
Right. Highlight how it aligns with company values.
Okay.
Show how other successful companies have implemented similar initiatives.
Okay, so that's social proof in action.
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding why people say yes.
And your sources give us some really practical tools to develop these skills,
They do.
including something called a power checklist,
Right.
which outlines like the key elements for a successful negotiation.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like a treasure map to negotiation success.
It does. Yeah, it includes things like knowledge organization, even risk-taking.
Right. And all those elements are interconnected.
Okay.
So, having a deep understanding of the other side's needs and motivations
Uh-huh.
enhances your credibility
Right.
and strengthens your negotiating position.
So it's about being prepared, doing your research, but also being strategic
Yeah.
and understanding the psychology at play.
Right.
Before we get too deep into tactics, though, what strikes me is how these sources emphasize the importance of relationships.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about viewing the other side as the enemy,
Right.
but as someone that you can collaborate with to find a solution that works for everyone.
And that feels really relevant for anyone who works in an office environment or in sales, where building and maintaining those positive relationships is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This approach is refreshing.
It is.
And I think it can be applied to anyone who just wants to improve their negotiation skills
Yeah,
in a way that feels authentic and sustainable.
absolutely.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
I am curious to hear a little bit more about this idea of using coercive deficiency as a source of power.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one where the sources mention things like hunger strikes,
Right.
like pretty intense example.
It is a provocative concept
Yeah,
that requires a lot of careful consideration.
yeah.
But essentially, it's about strategically using a perceived weakness to your advantage.
Oh, wow.
But obviously, ethical considerations are paramount there.
Yeah, definitely something to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
from principled negotiation to the psychology of persuasion.
Right.
I feel like we're building a toolkit for success here,
Yeah.
filled with insights and strategies.
Mm.
But how do we take all of this and actually apply it in our daily lives?
Right.
That's what I'm interested
Well, that's where this power checklist comes in. It's
Right.
not just a list,
Right.
but a guide to developing those skills and the mindset
Okay.
needed for effective negotiation.
So let's take a closer look
Yeah.
and break down each of these elements.
Let's do it.
Starting with knowledge.
Okay.
Knowledge is power, as they say,
It is.
in a negotiation.
Yeah.
It's the foundation for building that trust, credibility,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately successful outcomes.
Right.
So let's get into it.
Okay. So knowledge is really the foundation, right?
Yep.
The more you know about the other side, their interests,
Yeah.
constraints, motivations,
Yeah.
the better equipped you are to find that win-win.
So we're talking research,
Absolutely.
like not just about our own like product or proposal,
Right.
but about the person or the company we're negotiating with.
Yeah. What are their goals?
Okay.
What pressures are they facing? What's their negotiation style?
Okay. The more information you gather,
Uh-huh.
the stronger your position.
It makes me think of those like crime dramas where the detectives are piecing together the case,
Yeah.
looking for those seemingly insignificant details that crack it wide open.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It requires that same level of attention to detail,
Yeah.
gathering intel, analyzing patterns, anticipating their moves.
Wow. Okay, so knowledge isn't everything, though.
Right.
The checklist also emphasizes organization.
Yeah.
What does that look like in a negotiation?
Think of it as building a case like a lawyer would.
Okay.
You have your key arguments,
Okay.
your supporting evidence,
Mm-hmm.
and a clear strategy for presenting your points persuasively.
So no winging it.
No winging it.
Preparation is key.
Preparation is key.
Okay, speaking of taking risks,
Yes.
the checklist includes that too.
Right.
This one seems a bit counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
Like, aren't we trying to minimize risk in a negotiation,
It's not about being reckless.
but being willing to step outside your comfort zone?
Okay.
Sometimes the best outcomes come from exploring those creative options,
Okay.
proposing something unexpected.
So calculated risks.
Yeah,
Like instead of just accepting a low offer, proposing something higher,
right.
even if it feels a little scary.
Exactly. It's about advocating for yourself, knowing your value,
Mhm.
but being open to finding that mutually beneficial solution.
Okay.
Which brings us to legitimacy, another element on the checklist.
Ooh, intriguing. What does legitimacy mean in a negotiation?
It's about building credibility and trust.
Okay.
So this might involve bringing in outside experts to support your points
Oh,
or using data to back up your claims.
like adding weight to your
Eh,
argument.
Yeah, think of it like having strong references on your resume.
Right. It makes you a more believable candidate.
Exactly. And then we have persistence and patience.
Okay.
Those are essential,
Especially when things get tough.
especially when things get tough.
Yeah, persistence makes sense, especially in sales, where rejection is just kind of par for the course.
Right.
But how does patience come into play?
Patience is all about timing, you know?
Okay.
Knowing when to push and when to hold back.
Okay.
Sometimes the best strategy is to let the other side make the first move,
Hmm.
observe their tactics,
Okay.
and then respond strategically.
Like a game of chess.
Yeah, you're planning your moves carefully.
Thinking several steps ahead.
Exactly.
Okay, so the beauty of this checklist is that it seems pretty adaptable.
It is.
Like whether you're negotiating a salary or closing a deal
Right.
or even just navigating office politics.
Yeah, these principles can be applied.
It's like having a secret weapon.
It is.
But the real power comes from combining these elements, right?
Absolutely. And the goal is to achieve your objective
Yeah.
while maintaining those positive relationships.
Right.
It's not about manipulation. It's
Yeah.
about being effective
Uh-huh.
and respectful.
Right. And that's kind of what sets this approach apart from that win at all costs mentality.
Exactly.
It's about sustainable success where everyone feels valued.
Right.
And, one of the sources really emphasized the importance of separating the people from the problem.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in the emotions
It is.
and take things personally.
Right. We've all been there.
Right. But it's vital to remember that you're addressing the issues,
Right.
not attacking the person.
You're not attacking the person.
Arena.
You're addressing the issues.
By focusing on shared interests and common goals,
Yeah.
we can often find a path to resolution,
Right.
even when there's disagreement.
Absolutely. And this is especially crucial in a workplace
Yeah.
where you might have to negotiate with your colleagues or clients regularly.
Regularly. Yeah.
So building and maintaining those positive relationships is key.
Well.
For long-term success, approaching those conversations with a problem-solving mindset.
Yeah.
It fosters trust and rapport.
It's like that famous quote, hard on the merit, soft on the people.
Exactly.
Finding that balance between assertiveness and empathy.
Right.
And sometimes that means being willing to walk away.
Yeah.
If the deal doesn't align with your values, or if the other side isn't negotiating in good faith.
Absolutely.
Yeah, knowing your worth
Mm-hmm.
and being confident in your ability to find other opportunities.
Right. It's a form of resilience in itself.
It is.
But remember,
Yeah.
negotiation is a skill that can be developed over time.
So you don't have to be like a born smooth talker.
Not at all.
Okay.
The more you practice, the more comfortable and effective you'll become.
So it's a learning curve.
It is. And the great thing is you can start applying these principles right now in any area of your life.
I love that.
Yeah.
So even if you're not facing like a high stakes negotiation right now,
Right.
you can still benefit from practicing these skills.
Absolutely.
Like maybe role playing with a friend or a colleague,
Yeah.
even on something as simple as like deciding where to go to lunch.
Exactly. It's about building those communication muscles.
Okay.
So developing your personal style of negotiation.
Okay. One of the sources also highlighted the power of storytelling in negotiation,
Oh, yeah.
which seemed kind of counterintuitive to me at first.
It did.
Like stories in a business negotiation, how does that even work?
It's about making your arguments relatable and memorable.
Okay.
So instead of just presenting cold, hard facts,
Right.
you weave a narrative
Okay.
that helps the other side understand your perspective and connect with your goals on an emotional level.
Like that saying, facts tell, but stories sell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sources even talk about how fictional stories can
Right.
influence our beliefs and behaviors.
Right.
Think about how captivated we are by movies or novels,
Totally.
even though we know they're not real.
Our brains are wired for stories.
Exactly. So if you can tell a compelling story that illustrates your point
Hmm.
and resonates with the other person's values,
Yeah.
it can be a powerful tool for persuasion.
It's finding that sweet spot between logic and emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
Crafting a narrative that informs and engages.
And that reminds me of another point from the sources, using objective criteria
Yes.
to support your arguments.
Yeah.
Like it's not just about stating your opinion.
Right.
It's about grounding your position in something verifiable and impartial.
It's about appealing to fairness and reason,
Okay.
which builds trust and credibility.
So instead of just saying, I deserve a raise,
Right.
you might present data on industry salary averages
Exactly.
or highlight how your accomplishments have contributed to the company's success.
Back up your claims with something tangible,
Okay.
something that's harder to dismiss,
Okay.
and be willing to compromise.
Yeah.
Find solutions that benefit both sides.
It's a delicate dance.
It is.
Finding that balance between assertiveness and flexibility,
Right.
logic and emotion.
Yeah. But these sources offer a roadmap,
They do.
guiding us towards a more effective and fulfilling way to negotiate.
And they remind us that negotiation isn't about manipulation or trickery.
Yeah.
It's about building those relationships,
Right.
finding common ground,
Mm-hmm.
creating solutions that work for everyone involved.
A much more sustainable and fulfilling approach, both personally and professionally.
Agreed. But we've been talking a lot about the how of negotiation.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the when.
Okay.
The sources mention something called matching bargaining phases.
Right.
What exactly does that mean? So matching bargaining phases sounds like we need to be in sync with the other person at every stage.
Yeah, that's the core idea, recognizing that a negotiation isn't just one big conversation.
Right.
It has distinct stages,
Okay.
from information gathering to exploring options to problem solving and finally reaching a commitment.
Like a dance routine.
Yes.
Where if you miss a step,
Right.
everything's thrown off.
Exactly. And if one person is rushing to close the deal before truly understanding the other side's needs, it can create friction and mistrust and even derail the whole thing.
So patience and timing are as important as the tactics themselves.
Absolutely. And it ties back to building those strong relationships.
Yeah.
Rushing the process might signal a lack of respect for the other person's perspective.
Okay, so now remember that concept of coercive deficiency we talked about earlier?
Yes.
Where the sources talked about how revealing a weakness can actually strengthen your position?
Right.
That still feels a little bit like a paradox to me.
It does.
How can showing vulnerability be a good thing in a negotiation?
So imagine a scenario where a supplier is consistently late with deliveries,
Okay.
which is impacting your business.
Right.
Now, instead of threats, you calmly explain how these delays are putting your company at risk,
Okay.
potentially causing layoffs.
So you're showing them the real-world consequences.
Exactly.
You're not just complaining. You're making them see the impact of their actions.
You're appealing to their sense of fairness and responsibility without resorting to those aggressive tactics.
But obviously, this tactic should be used carefully and ethically.
Absolutely.
It's about being strategic, not manipulative.
Right. And the sources stress that coercive deficiency is just one tool in the negotiation toolbox.
Right.
It's not a guaranteed win, but it can be effective in specific situations.
So the key is to have a diverse set of tools and know which one to use at the right time.
Exactly. And that comes with experience.
Right.
The more you negotiate, the better you'll become at reading the situation and choosing the most effective approach.
So it's an ongoing learning process.
It is.
It's not about mastering some secret formula,
Right.
but about developing a flexible, adaptable mindset.
Exactly. And these sources encourage us to view negotiation as a skill that's constantly evolving.
Right.
Being curious, empathetic, and genuinely interested in finding solutions that benefit everyone.
It's like shifting from a me versus them to we're in this together.
Exactly.
That feels much more sustainable,
It is.
both in our professional and our personal lives.
Absolutely, because collaboration often leads to more creative and mutually beneficial outcomes.
So if we could distill all this wisdom into one key takeaway for our listeners,
Yeah.
what would it be? What's the heart of successful negotiation?
It all boils down to communication.
Okay.
Really listening to understand, not just waiting for your turn to speak, expressing your needs clearly and respectfully,
Okay.
and always being open to compromise, to finding creative solutions that address everyone's interests.
So it's a call to be more mindful,
Yeah.
more intentional in all our interactions.
Precisely. And remember, negotiation is a skill. You can hone a muscle, you can strengthen.
Right.
Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone, experiment, and discover your own unique negotiation style.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of negotiation.
It has.
We've uncovered some really practical strategies, psychological insights, even a few counterintuitive moves.
Yeah.
I feel like I've leveled up my negotiation skills just by having this conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
So to wrap things up, remember to approach every negotiation with a positive attitude, a willingness to learn, and a genuine desire to create those win-win outcomes.
Well said.
And with that, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
How can you apply these principles not just in business deals or salary talks, but also to improve your relationships, achieve your goals, and create a more collaborative and fulfilling life?
The journey of negotiation is ongoing.
Yeah.
Embrace the challenge and enjoy the process of discovery.